My name is Nemastil. Originally, I am from St. Petersburg, Russia. I moved to the United States when I was 8 and a half, like 9. I turned 9 that summer. And so my native language, my first language, is not English, it is Russian. How Japanese came about is in 8th grade, we had to sign up for foreign language options, choose, you have your registration. And there was a meeting with my counselor, my mother, and me. And my counselor just wrote Japanese on the paper. And I was like, wait, it's really hard. I can't, why? I don't want to do it. I just want to do Spanish because it's so much easier because, that's the thought process of every student. What's the easiest work? Can I do the minimum work? Knowing nothing about either language, I just assumed it'd be easier. And my mom was like, no, you're going to do Japanese because it is harder and you already speak Russian, so, different language, it should be just good for you, it's out of the box. So I went into it kind of by force. I had no existing knowledge or prerequisite knowledge of Japanese. I did not go into it with the very popular, usually a lot of kids are interested, they have pre-existing ideas of Japan, or they know things about popular culture such as anime, anime, manga. They watch YouTube Vocaloids, So there's a lot, so the kids have that interest and it kind of drives them to take Japanese. I did not have that typical, or Pokemon or video games. I wasn't into that. So I just took it because my mom kind of made me. And then, I took it for 3 years in high school. And I really fell in love with it. I thought it was so cool and different. We learned hiragana and katakana and a little bit of kanji. And in my 11th grade summer, between 11th grade and my senior year, I went to Japan for like 10 days on a tour, a typical high school tour, and I really fell in love with the country. But that kind of began the Japanese studies, but it didn't, I had no idea what I was doing. I went to college, to Miami University, and my application and my audition was for piano music, again, not Japanese. My mom, I grew up as a musician. My mom has a master's in music. I did piano my whole life, so that was kind of set up for me. And I auditioned for music, and I did piano, and then I realized the more I was in that department, the more I hated my life. And the more I hated, I really felt like I thought this was going to be what it is, because at 18, we all brilliantly think that we know what we're doing with our lives. And then the more I was in it, the more I realized I don't even want to be here. I'm not enjoying this anymore. It's not what I thought it was going to be. So I kept taking Japanese because a lot of majors, most majors require a foreign language. And I kept taking it because I had it in high school, so I started with second year Japanese. I could kind of jump ahead a little bit. And I kept taking it, and I felt like I was more connected and more interested and more driven in the Japanese department. And I wanted to do less and less and less with piano. Sorry. Less and less piano and music. And my boyfriend at the time decided he was going to study abroad in South Korea. And I didn't want to be all by myself in America, so I thought, well, I'm studying Japanese, I'll study abroad in Japan. So we're in the same kind of time zone, very close, like an hour-and-a-half flight. So I went to Japan for a year, I went to Kansai Gaidai, and he went to South Korea for a year, and we went kind of back and forth and traveled and saw each other. And in Japan is really when it got interesting. That's where Japanese became hard, because you have these ideas of what academic language is, you have your chapters, you have your grammar points, you got your vocabulary, you can master your quizzes, but when you're in the country or you're forced to speak, you realize that, oh no, I don't know what to say. I studied it for so many years. What have I been doing? Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. That was me. I spent a year at Kansai Gaidai University, which Miami University had a connection. It was a study abroad. Okay. And that's me in high school. Pretty cool. It was raining the entire trip. because it was rainy season most of like the 4 months, from like May to September, whichever. And I lived with a host family, and that was life-changing because there was different options. You could have lived in a dorm, you could have had an apartment by yourself, or you could have lived with a host family. And I got really lucky. I had a really wonderful host family, and I did a whole year abroad with them. And that's where I picked up all my awesome Osaka accents and my Osaka dialect and all Osaka things. So that was, I would say, in terms of studying abroad, I would say that's, for me, that the best way to really get to know the culture and the knowledge, to expand your Japanese knowledge, and just to know how to communicate, because a classroom, as immersive as we can try to make it as teachers, is never going to be as immersive as a real setting where you're forced to speak on the spot. I graduated college with a Bachelor's of Music and a Bachelor's of East Asian Languages and Cultures in Japanese, and no prospect. I really didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of walked to the graduation with my gown. I got my papers in the mail, kind of looked at them, put them away, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I took a year off and I worked in retail. If anybody's worked in retail, awesome. You really learn to work with people and maybe hate people as well. And I realized at that point I worked at the mall, and I would have sometimes, very rarely, because there was a Cleveland area, so there wasn't that many Japanese in the area. It's not like Columbus. I'd have customers come into the store and they spoke Japanese, and that's when I really kind of lit up. Or people that spoke Russian, and that's what I would notice, and I'd be like, what am I doing? Why am I folding clothes? So I did that for a year, and I applied for the Master's of Education program at OSU, which is not a Master's of Japanese or Master's of Linguistics or Master's of Literature. It's a degree that teaches you how to teach languages. So in my cohort I had Japanese, actually I was the only Japanese and Russian teacher. There was majority Spanish licensures, French, German, and Chinese. And the reason I applied for that because I realized all of my experiences where I enjoyed what I was doing. It was tutoring Russian, tutoring Japanese, teaching little kids, teaching ESL. It all had to do with teaching, but I really did not have a direct pathway to it in terms of education. After I graduated from my MED, there was a brand new program that opened up in Marysville, and that's the job I wanted. That was the job of my dreams because you get to do what you want, you get to teach what you want, how you want. So you kind of have your own freedom, and I build my own curriculum. In terms of that, this is the second year of the Marysville High School program. Are any of you interested into going into education, teaching foreign language? Teaching Japanese, possibly? Possibly? Some brave people. My mentor teacher is right there. I studied, so when you do a teaching program, you have to student teach. So they put you in a school and you kind of play teacher for 6 months to a year. So that's how you really learn things there. So life without Japanese, where would I be? I really don't know where I'd be because I took it so randomly, and then it kind of really changed my degree pathway and what I wanted to do in college, and it also changed what I did post-college. You know, people think that you have this certain pathway, you know, your parents tell you what you probably should be doing, and then at 18 you choose your degree that you shouldn't, and then that's how perfectly you graduate, and then you find a career. That's not how it always works out. You know, people have different pathways and different connections, and all of the panelists that have spoken here have really expressed like they have really interesting ways and interesting life stories as to how Japanese has been incorporated in their lives. Not all of them studied it and became translators, or studied it and became teachers. They studied it and went to Japan and then did business and then did this and that. So it's never a straight path, and I encourage you guys to kind of go off your path. And if you don't like classes that you're taking, you probably shouldn't follow that path because it's just going to be, you know, harder. And if you don't like what you're doing now, this is the time to experiment and to switch majors and switch majors again and switch classes and switch languages, because right now at this age you're really learning what you want to be doing. So life without Japanese kind of shifted. Like I said, music. I have a Bachelor's of Music. I play the piano. I've done private lessons, but they say music and language are related because some people even argue that music is a language in itself. But I don't know where I'd be because it's kind of serendipity. It kind of has been following me for a long time, but it definitely wasn't something I knew I wanted to pursue in high school. And I had no idea I was going to teach it even in college, even upon graduation from a bachelor's degree. So you never know. Interesting things that I find about Japan, interesting versus challenging. I would say some interesting aspects of culture because I'm not as driven by mainstream culture as sometimes kids are. I really like traditional music. I find traditional instruments very cool because I'm a kind of musical person. I find ikebana, I learned flower arrangements. I like that quiet, still. I like ceramics. I spent a year learning how to do Japanese ceramics when I was at Kansai. You can take that class if you ever study abroad. Ceramics or calligraphy. So I like that. I like traditional. I like food. A lot of food. As far as challenging aspects of Japanese culture, I would say being a woman in Japan is definitely more challenging because it is a very patriarchal society. Men are the ones that typically go high up in the business world, so I feel being a woman is challenging. Even when I went to Japan this summer, I took students abroad. It was me and another male teacher, and all of the questions were addressed to the male teachers, even though I was right here. I was asked if I spoke Japanese, if I read Japanese. So that happens, and that's, I would say, challenging, but I feel like as Japan evolves and as we evolve and the United States evolves, and the more non-native speakers and women that we have go back and forth and travel and speak the language, the better I think that relationship and that can grow. And my advice to students, first of all, you should eat everything at all times. I like bread. Japan has the best pastries ever. Advice to students is studying. Some panelists have mentioned this, and if I kind of go back and think about it, definitely do things in increments. Somebody mentioned on a previous panel that she does flashcards. This is an adult who graduated, doesn't have a test coming up, doesn't have kanji or some conjugation thing that that you're cramming in for the night before. She's studying for fun, and the way she makes it fun is she makes her own flashcards, and she does it for 10 to 20 minutes a day. That is so much more valuable than cramming for hours, looking at your book and hoping the information is going to fly into your brain. Definitely make it applicable to yourself. Make it short increments of time, whether it's kanji, writing, or listening. And make it fun, because if you don't like it, if you don't like the topic, if you don't like what you're talking about, it's not going to stick. The only time things really stick with you in terms of lessons in language or history class or science class is when you found that it was relevant to your life. And that's why you found it was interesting and it hit something in your brain and it stuck. So in terms of language, find what you want to learn about. Find an aspect of culture. Find a topic you want to talk about. If you want to talk about that in Japanese, that's going to drive you to learn those Japanese words or to learn that Japanese vocabulary. Would you agree? Yes? No? How many of you are studying Japanese right now? Right? How many of you have maybe chapters or units that you're not so, you're all really into it? Every single word? Every single word? So there's times that I think we're in academic settings that we learn things and we don't necessarily have to be learning them, or we're learning them for some bigger picture later on. But definitely find something that you want to learn and find something that drives you, whether it's manga, whether it's anime. If you want to watch anime and really get meaning, then watch that. Or whether it's history or old movies or calligraphy or art. Find something that you're interested about, because that's going to push you to learn more. If you're bored, you're not. Passive learning isn't really learning. It's listening and information is going in one ear and out the other.